皆さんこんにちは。タッチベースの野村です。1週間に1回更新のペースがなかなか難しく、また2週間空いてしまいました。すいません。さて、今回はいつもと雰囲気が違う音楽でスタートをしましたが、内容もいつもと少し違います。今回から試験的に英語でのビジネスコミュニケーションに関するテーマをお届けしていきたいと思います。しかも英語を学ぶためには英語で学ぶのが一番ということで、言語は英語でお届けしていきます。話をしてくれるのは元ボストンマーケティングパートナーズのスペンサー。大学では言語学を専攻し、趣味はPoetryという言語のスペシャリストの彼は日米間のビジネスの経験も豊富。アメリカでのビジネスコミュニケーションのここって一体どうなのというところを聞いていきたいと思います。今回はその第1弾として Jokes in a Business Setting、 英語のビジネスでのジョークはWitty Banterが鍵をお届けしていきます。ポッドキャストでは英語のみの配信となりますが、タッチベースのサイトにて日本語訳も公開しておりますので、そちらもチェックしてください。では早速どうぞ。
Jokes in a business setting, with a focus on Japanese audience coming to America. People talk a lot about how to connect with your business partner, how to make an impression, how to be natural, and a lot of times this comes down to being funny. And being funny and telling jokes is, I feel, and I've learned, is very hard for
SADs.
Yeah, very hard for, well, especially for Japanese speakers and culturally Japanese people, because in a lot of cases, you don't tell jokes in an office, but in a US corporate office setting, in most cases, you'll find in everyday life people being funny all the time. Everyone has sort of something to say. This is in basic office setting, but when you have a meeting with your boss, with your teammates, you're going to joke too. And even when you have a meeting with a client, you're going to express your office culture, and you're going to talk. You're going to say some of these sort of funny things that you've come across throughout the day. So that's sort of a snapshot of the culture that American office culture, which creates sort of the need for humor and the need for jokes. I did some research. There's a woman named Allison Beard who wrote an article in the Harvard Business Review about this subject, about jokes in a business culture. And she said, I'm a huge fan of witty banter. Witty, it means smart, so kind of like quick yaritori, sort of back and forth kind of action. And banter just means speaking quickly. It's not like a big long joke. It doesn't take a long time. It doesn't make me laugh forever. I'm not laughing for 3 minutes. The point of it is to help sort of everyone enjoy the day a little bit more. If you get a spam email, or a potential client comes in with a very strange request, you'll talk about that to your office mates and stuff, and it's funny, and that makes the day sort of go by. This is not stand-up comedy. It's not one person talking for 15 minutes. It's not a it's not a kid's joke. It's not like a knock joke. It's not a talk show joke. It's not even a really super complex joke you might find in a book, that takes a lot of setup. It's just very, very surface stuff to help people feel easier. Actually, even for someone who's not so confident with their English language, even someone who's not so ready to fully understand American culture, I think they can achieve this.
But I think as a Japanese, I have to ask what kind of jokes would be proper. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a super nerve-wracking thing. Like, I worry about that all the time in Japan too, like when I'm trying to tell a joke. So a few things, and there's many things that, not to do, but just a few big ones is stay away from jokes that require specific knowledge. For example, I'm in the Boston the Boston area, and
Mm-hmm.
Boston's very famous for sports. Red
Mm-hmm.
Sox, Patriots football, if you're into that,
Mm-hmm.
basketball, Celtics. It's big. If you're coming from a foreign place such as Japan, you might say, "Oh well, everyone in Boston loves sports, so I'm gonna tell a sports joke."
Mm-hmm.
But to be perfectly honest, I don't really care about sports.
Okay. Yeah.
And I know who the Red Sox are, of course, but like if you tell me a funny joke, about sports, I'm just gonna be like, huh. It's not gonna be really great. So I'd
Mm-hmm.
stay away from stuff that requires specific knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
What I recommend is focus on things that are slightly out of the ordinary. My prior office was in a co-working space,
Mm-hmm.
so there was lots of different, every floor had different offices. There was like 200 offices in the whole building. So with co-working, meeting rooms are shared. So you reserve a meeting room, and each floor had a set of meeting rooms, and each floor of this big co-working space had a different theme.
Mm-hmm.
So one theme was history, one theme was food, So for a meeting with some clients, I booked a room on the poetry floor.
Okay.
So yeah,
it sounds a little bit
already
strange.
Well, that's exactly what I'm getting at. Like
Yeah.
it is sort of strange. So
Yeah.
each meeting room had the name of like a different famous poet.
Okay.
So you'd book a room in the Shakespeare room or something, and or some room. So I booked a room in this guy's name. His name is Edgar Allan Poe.
Mm-hmm.
He's not exactly a famous poet, but anyway, that was the name of the room, and I was like, huh, this is weird. And so I was like, yeah, meet me. I met them in the lobby, and I was explaining about co-working, and we walk through the offices, and we get to the meeting room, and it says right on the door this poet's name.
Mm-hmm.
And so right when we come in, I say, hey, so I know we're here to talk about your product and how we're gonna get it into the United States, but actually I brought this book of poetry by Edgar Allan Poe, and we're just going to read that for 45 minutes. Like, and they all kind of stopped for just a quick second, and then everyone laughed.
Yeah.
Because what I did is I pointed out something that is just a little bit odd about the space that our office was in. It's not terrible, but it's weird. There's a room named after a poet.
Mm-hmm.
And they probably noticed that too. When they came in, they were like, huh, this is weird. And so just by pointing that out, and then together, I recognized that it's weird, and they recognized that it's weird.
Okay.
And so in that instant, we formed a bond. So my suggestion is, if you can find something like that, something slightly out of the ordinary to bond over, then you can really go a long way with your client, because you've set up sort of a relationship.
Right. And it seems like you don't really have to overthink. Like, as soon as you feel something weird or like something odd or something off, you just point that out. As easy as that.
Yep. It's as easy as that. And that's really the point I wanted to sort of drive home. The minute you start thinking and planning a joke, it's just the worst. Well, it's suddenly you're like, okay, it's 3:26. It's time for my joke. Like, guys, wait. It doesn't.
Well, that's funny though. Like, if you actually say that.
Well, that actually is a good segue. So a pitfall, a problem that you can easily come across with joking is it's very easy to make fun of yourself.
Right.
If you don't know what to do, you can just talk about something bad you did, and it's funny. And it's also true because it's bad. So let's take your example. If you try to make fun of yourself by, stopping a meeting and saying, okay, I was told I had to tell a joke. Now I'm going to tell a joke. It might work. It might work, but really what you're doing is you're showing your business partner how unprepared you are, and how sort of little you understand. You're sort of showing that you haven't learned very much about about the culture. For example, you didn't get the right SIM card or something when you flew to the United States. There's maybe your cell phone doesn't work, so it's tough, and maybe it's been really hard to talk to your home office because there's this mess. You can talk about that, and it can be funny in a meeting. But what you're really communicating is that your office is disorganized,
right? Okay.
And you can't figure out how to how to get cell phones running. So it's very tempting to sort of go that route,
right?
But if you have a strange experience during your trip that is not your fault, then that can be something interesting to talk about. Like, for example, if you hired a travel agency to sort of, take you around Boston, for example, and this travel agency takes you to the beach in the winter, and you go to the beach and it's freezing cold, and you're like, why, what, this is weird. That can be a really funny story. And it's good to tell because it didn't happen. It's not your office's fault, It's this weird travel company,
right?
And they did something strange, and you can sort of talk about it, and everyone will hear it and think it's funny, and you'll again sort of have that shared bond because no one wants to be freezing on the beach, right?
Right.
And immediately, your partners in the meeting will, think about that, and they'll think about themselves being cold. And again, you've created this sort of shared bond. Like representatives coming over to the States, they're very intelligent usually. So they're usually very aware of these kinds of things. And what they always err on the side of is silence. And you'll hear that, this is a pretty common complaint among American meeting partners with Japanese clients is like, hey, we talked and talked. There was even an interpreter there, but the Japanese side didn't say anything. Which I would say is almost as bad because remember what you're trying to do is form a bond, with your partner. And by saying nothing, you also create no bond, which can be very bad. It leaves in an American business partners that I've talked to after meeting with Japanese, they feel very nervous and anxious and unsure about whether or not their partners were serious. If they didn't have any questions, did they really think about the meeting? Even if you aren't super confident to be able to dive into, the mechanics of business in America in English, trying to be a little funny is a great way to sort of, form a connection, even if you're not fully confident to explain the intricacies of your business. Looking back, and now that I know much more about Japanese culture, oftentimes I go into a meeting and expect silence. It's sort of more comfortable. Like I sort of know now what to expect, having done a lot of this. But I think back to that first time, and I often think to myself, well, if they just said something, if they just communicated a little bit more, it would have been a much better experience. And I've had other cases where I've been advising Americans about a Japanese product, about a Japanese business, and the American distributor, for example, gets in a meeting or a phone call or a video call or a physical meeting with the Japanese client, and they don't say anything, and then the distributor call me after and be like, I don't know what that was, but I'm not gonna take it very seriously. Those guys, it sounds like they don't know anything. It sounds like they didn't do any research. Like, I don't know what that was about, but I have other priorities. I think you can miss a lot of opportunities by being silent in a meeting.
I think a lot of Japanese are not really comfortable enough to tell a joke in English. Would it be worth a risk telling a joke? Like it's worth a try?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think you should err. I think it is. No, I think it is. And I think you get around that risk by erring on the side of caution. usually like a joke is something we consider to be really funny, or high humor, like really high level humor. Usually is talking about politics. It's usually talking about society, big, deep social problems.
Right. Right.
There's usually so much going on, and to understand them or laugh at them, you have to basically grow up in the whole. You have to have 25, 35, 40 years of experience to really sort of get them. Having said that, I think, especially in corporate business culture, I feel people have realized the need to be able to connect instantly, and to connect even if you don't share the same cultural background or share the same experiences, and you need to be able to sort of talk to each other quickly. So I feel in my experience, there's a way to communicate that is easy enough to grasp, and you can be funny without knowing everything about a place. It's how maybe you can travel across the country. Maybe I have a business meeting in Arizona, the state of Arizona. I don't know anything about Arizona. It's different. It's hot. It's dry. It's a desert. There's sports teams that I don't know. Like people talk differently. The accents are different.
Right.
And I won't understand any jokes, about Arizona.
Right.
But I can go into a meeting and again make a funny sort of, back to the witty banter that I talked about. You can sort of point out something that's strange in those situations, and you can quickly create a bond.